there will be something. It will touch something that's going on in your life in a meaningful way. So look for something that's pertinent to you in these 9 chapters, and then be looking for repetitions. As we study the book of Proverbs, we're going to call this study, which will take us for at least a couple months, Skillful Living in God's World. Skillful Living in God's World. So read along with me, with your eyes, as I read aloud, Proverbs, starting in chapter 1, verse 1. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. To know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight, to receive instruction in wise dealing, in righteousness, justice, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance, to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching, for they are a graceful garland for your head and pendants for your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason. Like Sheol, let us swallow them alive, and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We will all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood. For in vain is a net spread in the sight of any bird, but these men lie in wait for their own blood. They set an ambush for their own lives. Such are the ways of everyone who is greedy for unjust gain. It takes away the life of its possessors. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the markets, she raises her voice. At the head of the noisy streets, she cries out. At the entrance of the city gates, she speaks. How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing, and fools hate knowledge? If you turn at my reproof, behold, I will pour out my spirit to you. I will make my words known to you. Because I have called and you refuse to listen, have stretched out my hand and no one has heeded, because you have ignored all my counsel and would have none of my reproof, I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when terror strikes you, when terror strikes you like a storm, and your calamity comes like a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you. Then they will call upon me, but I won't answer. They will seek me diligently, but will not find me, because they hated knowledge. They didn't choose the fear of Yahweh, would have none of my counsel, and despised all my reproof. Therefore they shall eat the fruit of their way, and have their fill of their own devices. For the simple are killed by their turning away, and the complacency of fools destroys them. But whoever listens to me will dwell secure and will be at ease without dread of disaster. My son, if you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding. Yes, if you call out for insight and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek for it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of Yahweh and find the knowledge of God. For Yahweh gives wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He's a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you. Understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech who forsake the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perverseness of evil, men whose paths are crooked and who are devious in their ways. So you will be delivered from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house sinks down to death, and her paths to the departed. None who go to her come back, nor do they regain the paths of life. So you will walk in the way of the good and keep to the paths of the righteous. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those with integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous will be rooted out of it. My son, do not forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commandments. For length of days and years of life and peace they will add to you. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. So you will find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and don't lean on your own understandings. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear Yahweh and turn away from evil. It will be healing to your flesh and refreshment to your bones. Honor Yahweh with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. My son, do not despise Yahweh's discipline or be weary of his reproof, for Yahweh reproves him whom he loves, as a father the son in whom he delights. Blessed is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gets understanding. For the gain from her is better than gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. She is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called blessed. Yahweh by wisdom founded the earth. By understanding he established the heavens. By his knowledge the deeps broke open, and the clouds dropped down the dew. My son, do not lose sight of these. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, and they will be life for your soul, an adornment for your neck. Then you will walk on your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. If you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. Don't be afraid of sudden terror or of the ruin of the wicked when it comes, for Yahweh will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. Don't withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to do it. Don't say to your neighbor, "Go and come again tomorrow and I'll give it," when you have it with you. Don't plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. Don't contend with a man for no reason when he has done you no harm. Don't envy a man of violence, and don't choose any of his ways. For the devious person is an abomination to Yahweh, and the upright are in his confidence. Yahweh's curse is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the dwelling of the righteous. Toward the scorners he is scornful, but to the humble he gives favor. The wise will inherit honor, but fools get disgrace. Hear, O sons, a father's instruction, and be attentive that you may gain insight. For I give you good precepts. Do not forsake my teaching. When I was a son with my father, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, "Let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom. Get insight. Don't forget. And don't turn away from the words of my mouth. Don't forsake her, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. And whatever you get insight. Prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown. Hear, my son, and accept my words, that the years of your life may be many. I have taught you the way of wisdom. I have led you in the paths of uprightness. When you walk, your step will not be hampered, and if you run, you will not stumble. Keep hold of instruction. Don't let go. Guard her, for she is your life. Don't enter the path of the wicked, and don't walk in the way of the evil. Avoid it. Don't go on it. Turn away from it and pass on. For they cannot sleep unless they've done wrong. They're robbed of sleep unless they've made someone stumble. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. But the path of the righteous is like the light of dawn, which shines brighter and brighter until full day. The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They don't know over what they stumble. My son, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Don't swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. My son, be attentive to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my understanding, that you may keep discretion and your lips may guard knowledge. For the lips of a forbidden woman drip honey, and her speech is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps follow the path to Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life. Her ways wander, and she does not know it. And now, O sons, listen to me, and don't depart from the words of my mouth. Keep your way far from her. Don't go near the door of her house, lest you give your honor to others and your years to the merciless. Lest strangers take their fill of your strength and your labors go to the house of a foreigner. And at the end of your life, you groan when your flesh and body are consumed, and you say, how I hated discipline and my heart despised reproof. I didn't listen to the voice of my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. I'm at the brink of utter ruin in the assembled congregation. Drink water from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. Should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. Why should you be intoxicated, my son, with a forbidden woman and embrace the bosom of an adulteress? For a man's ways are before the eyes of Yahweh, and he ponders all his paths. The iniquities of the wicked ensnare him, and he's held fast in the cords of his sin. He dies for lack of discipline, and because of his great folly, he is led astray. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, have given pledge for a stranger, if you're snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself, for you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, and plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. And go to the ant, O sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief, officer, or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest? And poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech, winks with his eyes, signals with his feet, points with his finger. With perverted heart devises evil, continually sowing discord. Therefore calamity will come upon him suddenly. In a moment he will be broken beyond healing. There are 6 things that Yahweh hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. My son, keep your father's commandment and forsake not your mother's teaching. Bind them on your heart always. Tie them around your neck. When you walk, they will lead you. When you lie down, they will watch over you. And when you awake, they will talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, and the teaching a light, and the reproofs of discipline are the way of life, to preserve you from the evil woman and from the smooth tongue of the adulteress. Don't desire her beauty in your heart. Don't let her capture you with her eyelashes. For the price of a prostitute is only a loaf of bread, but a married woman hunts down a precious life. Can a man carry fire next to his chest and his clothes not be burned? Or can one walk on hot coals and his feet not be scorched? So is he who goes into his neighbor's wife. None who touches her will go unpunished. People do not despise a thief if he steals to satisfy his appetite when he's hungry, but if he is caught, he will pay 7-fold. He will give all the goods of his house. He who commits adultery lacks sense. He who does it destroys himself. He will get wounds and dishonor, and his disgrace will not be wiped away. For jealousy makes a man furious, and he will not spare when he takes revenge. He will accept no compensation. He will refuse, though you multiply gifts. My son, keep my words and treasure up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live. Keep my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call insight your intimate friend, to keep you from the forbidden woman, from the adulteress with her smooth words. For at the window of my house I have looked out through my lattice, and I've seen among the simple, I've perceived among the youths a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house in the twilight, in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him, dressed as a prostitute, wily of heart. She is loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. Now in the street, now in the market, and at every corner she lies in wait. She seizes him and kisses him, and with bold face she says to him, I had to offer sacrifices, and today I've paid my vows. So now I have come out to meet you, to seek you eagerly. I've found you. I've spread my couch with coverings, colored linens from Egyptian linen. I've perfumed my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Come, let us take our fill of love till morning. Let us delight ourselves with love. For my husband is not at home. He has gone on a long journey. He took a bag of money with him. At full moon, he'll come home. And with much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. All at once he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a stag is caught fast, till an arrow pierces its liver. As a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his life. And now, O sons, listen to me. Be attentive to the words of my mouth. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths, for many a victim has she laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads, she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals, she cries aloud, "To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right, for my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There's nothing twisted or crooked in them. They're all straight to him who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold, for wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge in discretion. The fear of Yahweh is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance in the way of evil and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. I love those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me and filling their treasuries. Yahweh possessed me at the beginning of his work, at the first of his acts of old. Ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth, when there were no depths, I was brought forth, when there were no springs abounding with water. Before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills, I was brought forth. Before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the fountains of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master workman. And I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the children of man. And now, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise. Do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from Yahweh. But he who fails to find me injures himself. All who hate me love death. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn her 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her beasts. She has mixed her wine. She has also set her table. She has sent out her young women to call from the highest places in the town. Whoever is simple, let him turn and hear. To him who lacks sense, she says, come, eat of my bread and drink of the wine I have mixed. Leave your simple ways and live and walk in the way of insight. Whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. Don't reprove a scoffer or he'll hate you. Reprove a wise man and he'll love you. Give instruction to a wise man, and he'll be wiser still. Teach a righteous man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years will be added to your life. If you are wise for yourself. If you scoff, you alone will bear it. The woman folly is loud. She's seductive and knows nothing. She sits at the door of her house. She takes a seat on the highest places of the town, calling to those who pass by, who are going straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn and hear. And to him who lacks sense, she says, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he does not know that the dead are there. that her guests are in the depths of Sheol. So reads the word of the living God. May he write its eternal truths on our hearts. I'll give you a second. It's a lot of Bible to take in one sitting. This may have been the first time you've experienced that much Bible in one sitting. Think about for a second all of the repeated phrases. Think about some of the emphases of the first 9 chapters of Proverbs, which in many ways are kind of a summary of the whole of the book. Think about the images that kept coming back, Lady Wisdom and Lady Folly, and how Solomon has pictured them. Proverbs, skillful living in God's world. I wasn't very good at soccer, ever, and especially not in middle school, which would have been okay if I weren't also arrogant. I used to be on a team that Mark Warden was the coach of. I don't know if you're familiar with Mark, but he taught my soccer team when I was in middle school. And I had to play defense, which is a kind way of saying I wasn't that good. And I went most of the season without scoring any goals, understandably, playing defense, even though occasionally they'd let me, go up and try to score a goal or something. It just never worked out. But eventually, one day, the time came. I got the ball. This is just after halftime. And I took off with it. And people were shouting, ecstatic from the sidelines, yelling at the top of their lungs. So loud. And I was on a breakaway. It was like no one was stopping me. And I got to the goal line, close to it, let her rip, right in the goal. It's like the goalie wasn't even there. That's because the goalie wasn't there, because it was our goal. My first goal that I scored was on my own team, for the other team. The shouting that was happening was not excitement. They were telling me to turn around, that I was going the wrong way. I was so excited to score a goal, so caught up in the moment. It's one of the most basic, essential things that happens in soccer. At halftime, you switch goals. There is a lot of foolishness in our world that will not listen to the voice of reason. That is heading in the wrong direction. That's essentially playing for the wrong team. And wisdom is crying aloud in the streets, is she not? The church on the corner of Braddock and Backlick and all over the corners of this world is crying aloud with the word of God and the wisdom of God. Don't go there. You're headed in the wrong direction. Turn around. A brief survey of the internet will confirm these suspicions. Any amount of people hurting themselves for a couple thousand views, saying outlandish things that hurt themselves and that hurt others, hurtful text messages, phone calls, Facebook posts, Instagram posts. The internet is brimming over with foolishness, sometimes from our own hands, if we're being honest. And what Solomon would have us understand in the book of Proverbs, more fundamentally than anything else, is that the way of wisdom requires that we know whose team we're on. We know which goal we're trying to score on. We know what it means to win. We know what success actually looks like, not just how it's been redefined. That we understand not just what we can do with life, or even what you might like to do with life, but what life itself is for. Why do you exist? Why did God give us language? Why do you have friendships? Why do we work? What is it all for, and how do I do it to get there? That's the book of Proverbs. Skillful living in God's world. You may remember, if you were here a while ago, that we went through the book of Ecclesiastes. We called it Wise Living in a Broken World. Solomon also wrote that book. And he was addressing a very different concern, was he not? That the world is cursed, it is broken, that your life is often hard and it doesn't make sense. So what do you do with that? Here in the book of Proverbs, he's taking the same world but looking at it from a different angle. He's not ignoring the brokenness of the world by any means, but he's simply saying, rather than look at this thing from the bottom up, let's look at it from the top down. Or as one author has said, the world will tell you to live and learn. Proverbs will tell you, learn and live. What Solomon is doing in the book of Proverbs, and he's not the only contributor, but he's the main contributor, is he is trying to grab us by the scruff of the neck and remind us about some of the most fundamental, basic truths of life. Maybe that you already know. Some of the most simple things that we so easily overlook. Wisdom, the Hebrew word chokmah, just means doing something skillfully. It's used a number of different times in the Bible to talk about artisans who are skillful, like Bezalel and Oholiab, who constructed the tabernacle, that they had skill in making gold and crafting fine things. That's the word. And so when it's used by itself in this context, you have to ask, skill at what? Skillful at doing what? It's not at crafting a fine wooden pulpit like Keenan did for us. It's not crafting a well-rounded sentence like so many good authors. It's life itself. Solomon wants you to live your life skillfully, knowing what the end product should look like, what it's for. Why did God give you hands and time and relationships? What do you do with them, and how do you maximize their usage to make the most of this life? My guess is that many of you right now, this being the college and young adult ministry, are at something of a crossroads in your life. Whether you're engaged and about to be married, whether you're in school and maybe about to be out of school, or you're just entering into school, or you're entering a new job, or you just moved, or maybe just COVID changed everything about your life and it's kind of a hard reset. And you're trying to figure out what's next. May I suggest that before you make any plans, you ask for God's wisdom, and that you find it here in the book of Proverbs, so that you know when you take your next step, you are not simply doing it because it feels right or because it seems good, but because it is what is wise. It will lead to the greatest outcome. Just very briefly, I want to remark on three things in the first 7 verses of the book of Proverbs. So if you could turn with me back to Proverbs 1:1-7, and I don't have any notes. I intended to do that so that I'll be brief. Proverbs 1, chapter 1, we're answering the question first, who wrote Proverbs? Who wrote Proverbs? 1:1, it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. I don't intend here to do a full survey of the life of King Solomon. Probably a number of you already know who he is. David, the king who is after God's own heart, had a son. His name was Solomon. He took the throne after him. And Solomon was given an option. He was actually an idol worshiper, worshiping at the high places. And then God stepped into his life and said, what do you want? I'll give it to you. And Solomon asked for wisdom, to know how to lead God's people well. And God granted it to him and much more. And so he became the greatest king in all of the history of Israel, wealth and wisdom abounding. He was wiser than all of his contemporaries, wiser than anyone else. And even, I think it's a funny note in 1 Kings 4, it says he's wiser than the worship leaders in the temple. It's kind of a dig. So he's the wisest man that lived. And it says in 1 Kings chapter 4 that he wrote 3,000 proverbs and 1,000 songs. We get one of those songs in Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. And we get a number of those proverbs here and also in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes, like I said, is kind of just the counterpart to the book of Proverbs in many ways. But Solomon did not write all of this by himself. If you get to chapter 22, you start to see there's a break, and now it says these are the sayings of the wise, and then another break a couple chapters later, these are the sayings of the wise, and then another break a couple chapters later, and it says that the men of Hezekiah gathered these things together. So apparently there are other wise men at different points that whoever compiled Proverbs eventually put all of this together, but Solomon is the main author. I think he's the author of probably all of 1 through 9. And then from that point on, I mean, if you turn to Proverbs chapter 10, you'll see it changes pretty dramatically from that point on. It's just little pithy sayings, which I'm sure you're very familiar with because you've heard these things before. A glad heart makes a cheerful face, but by sorrow of heart the spirit is crushed. It's just a little couplet. All the days of the evil of the afflicted are evil, but the cheerful of heart has a continual feast. And you all understand what a proverb is that Solomon as an author is trying to communicate to us. A proverb is just a pithy saying, an epigrammatic saying, a short, terse way of communicating some kind of profound truth. The word proverb in Hebrew really just means something that's like something else. It's making some kind of comparison to showing you that this is what life is like in some distilled form. Well, of course, we have these all over English, right? 2 in the hand is worth 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the whatever, whichever way it goes, right? You guys are, a stitch in time saves 9, right? Which I don't even know what that one means, but apparently it's profound. It's supposed to be helpful. Yeah, it's that. You all are familiar with Proverbs. That's what these are. And they're coming from the pen of Solomon. Secondly, I want to ask, why should we read the Proverbs? And Solomon answers it for us in the very beginning here. Look at verse 2 through 6. He has all these to statements. So that statements is really what it's for. To know, to receive, to give, to understand. Just look at the beginning of this. He says, to know wisdom and instruction, to understand words of insight. Wisdom, we've already talked about, is information that you need in order to live skillfully. It's different from knowledge. This isn't just botany class or algebra. This isn't training in some work issue. This is information about how to live life well that can only be wisdom when it is actually applied to life. Wisdom is skillful living. Wisdom is the truth about life and how to live it well. It's essentially the instruction manual for life. You want to play a board game that you've never played before? What do you have to do first? Well, you used to have to actually read the instructions. Now you just watch like a little YouTube video. But the idea is there's instructions, there's rules. This is how this thing works. You want to put together some IKEA furniture? Here's a picture of a faceless guy with some shapes, and he's going to put the splongelonk on the schningen, right? I actually do speak Swedish. That was real Swedish. No, it's not. You have to have the instructions to know how the thing works. That's what Proverbs is. You want to know how life works? This is it. God set it up this way. You could say it this way. The book of Proverbs is tracing the hand of providence. It shows us what God is doing in the world. Why is it that it usually is the case that to be a godly person is a good thing for you? It helps you stay out of trouble and keep relationships and be at peace with people. Why is it that the world works that way? Why isn't it that being godly actually just makes everything awful all the time? Because God made it that way. It's His design. God designed the world to work in a certain way. That's what Proverbs is. Now, of course, in your mind, you're already thinking, I can tell, there are exceptions. Of course there are. We live in a broken world. See Ecclesiastes. That's not what he's getting at here. A proverb isn't undone simply by the fact that there are exceptions to it. It's not trying to cover absolutely every case that there could possibly be. Just take, for instance, in Proverbs 25. Answer the fool according to his folly. Next verse, don't answer the fool according to his folly. Okay, so which one is it? Well, it depends on the situation. Different situations call for different kinds of wisdom, don't they? Certainly, many hands make light work, but you can also have too many cooks in the kitchen. Remember this when Jesse was teaching through Proverbs? He was teaching us that basically you can't just take Proverbs and say, this always happens this way all the time without fail. No, that's not what we're saying. This is God's basic design for how the world works. That's what wisdom is. And the second word here, instruction, this is a particularly helpful word because you're going to see it all over the book of Proverbs. Instruction is the same word that we get that's translated discipline. The implication of the word instruction is that you're not thinking about this rightly. You're going to do this wrong if left to your own devices. So you need to be corrected. I understand in a very palpable way this truth, not only for my own life, but because I have a 3-year-old. I understand what it means for someone to constantly want to make the wrong decision, to want to put their finger into an electrical socket. That's just the wrong decision for you at any moment in your day. And so you need instruction. You need discipline. You need someone to come in there and swat your hand. Say, no, don't do that. That will hurt you. Stop. No toques eso. I know that phrase very well in Spanish because I say it a lot to my son. That's what instruction is. You heard so much of it just in the first 9 chapters, didn't you? This is what it looks like if you follow the way of foolishness, if you follow the way of the wicked. Don't go down that path. Don't go there. This is going to hurt you. And so built into this basic understanding of wisdom and instruction, you have to come to it humble. You have to come to it willing to be taught, don't you? You have to come to it with a mindset, I might be wrong about something, and I need someone to tell me where I'm wrong and help me. Understand words of insight. The word insight is really just kind of another word for understanding, getting how the world works, having a framework for life itself. To receive instruction in wise dealing and righteousness, justice, and equity. Note the word to receive. This isn't just a passive kind of, well, I know it in my head, and so I can, like a computer, just mathematically apply this to all situations. No, this is a whole life kind of reception. The word is to take fully into yourself. You imbibe this truth. You live it. You let it own you. And here he says righteousness, justice, and equity. These 3 words talk about how you deal with other people in society. That you have right dealings in the world, that you're not a crooked person. Justice, that you give to people what is due. That you do not withhold what is due. Equity, that you're fair towards all people. You don't show partiality. And then he says to give prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the youth. Here he's now kind of turning to the perspective of a teacher instead of receiving. Now it's giving. You want wisdom not only so that you yourself have it, but so that you can give it. so that you can be helpful to other people, so that they then also have prudence, so that you know simple people, people whose thinking is, the word in Hebrew is fascinating for simple. It's a word picture of the mind being an open door. You know, we say in our culture, I love that guy, he's so open-minded. In Hebrew, that would be a very bad thing. Being open-minded means you let any dumb idea just waltz its way right into your head. You just accept it. Who cares? Yeah, sure. Come on in. No, you got to close that door. You want only the truth to get in the door. And that's the word for the simple person. That person needs for you to go to them and give them wisdom. You need to learn so that you can teach knowledge and discretion to the youth. And then he says, let the wise hear and increase in learning, and the one who understands obtain guidance. His point here is, listen, if you're a wise person, you never think that you are beyond being taught. You are a lifelong learner. Wise people are the most humble people. They're the people who come to you, who tell you, hey, you do that thing really well. Can you show me how to do that? They're the person who, when you correct them, when you confront them, they thank you for it rather than getting mad at you. You know what? Honestly, I didn't even see that. You're right. I was so wrong. Can you forgive me? I need help. Would you help me get better at that? Would you hold me accountable? That's a wise person. So the book of Proverbs is not just for simple people with the open door head. It's for people who already are discerning because they want it even more than the simple person. Wise people are the most teachable people. And if there's nothing else you take away from just these few verses in Proverbs, it's be teachable. Be teachable. The book of Proverbs is calling you over and over and over again. And so much of what you're going to hear as the guys teach through this book, I'm not the only one who's going to teach this, it's going to be the whole team of guys. As they teach through it, one of the things you're going to hear over and over and over again is just how valuable wisdom is. You need it. Why do you think Solomon does that? Well, because you don't think you need it. Because you don't think it's all that valuable, really. You think you're doing fine. I've got this, Solomon. Maybe you could use a little help. And then, verse 6, to understand a proverb and a saying, the words of the wise and their riddles. Just using a bunch of different words here to describe the kinds of material that you find in here, but it's all basically the same thing. It's some kind of saying that on a certain level is hard to understand, or it's at least hard to apply. And he wants you to understand it. He wants you to get it into your mind and into your heart. So then the question would be how? And this is going to be where we finish. What unlocks Proverbs? That's my third question. What unlocks Proverbs? Solomon says, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Solomon says in chapter 10 that even if you gave wisdom to a fool, it would be no good to him. It wouldn't help him at all. And you have to kind of ask some questions about that to understand it. But isn't it true that if you give someone kind of life principles, which a lot of this is, there's not quite as much kind of spiritual principles here. There's a lot of just basic life principles. If you give good life principles to someone who's foolish and they do them, isn't that better for them? Solomon's answer would be no, because their increase only leads to, he says, ruin. Because without the fear of Yahweh, which is one of the Bible's ways of talking about awful, reverent faith before God. Without the fear of Yahweh, or the fear of God, our sin condemns us to an eternal hell. That we will face only judgment without the fear of God. And so even to get off the starting block of anything that will last eternally, means that first and foremost, we have to submit ourselves to the holy God. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, is Solomon saying, absolutely everything about your life is ordained sovereignly by God. He is in control of it. So for you to ignore his part in it is utter foolishness. Or for you to treat God lightly, as if he's just some butler in your life who is there to serve your needs, is utterly foolish. He set up the game. He made the rules. He established the limits. He's the one who from the very beginning, we read in Proverbs 8, established all of the earth and all of the ways that it works. So how foolish would you be to then go to stare in the face of God and say, I don't have to think anything big about you. Instead, he says the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. Listen, if you're in a room with a grizzly bear and you see that grizzly bear, you stare him in the face and you're like, hey, grizzly bear, and then you just go back to doing what you're doing, that is dumb. That's foolish. That thing has power over you in that moment. It can control your next steps. So too with God, but in a far more infinite way. Everything you do, every aspect of your life is controlled by God. Proverbs is just tracing how that works. And so it's going to be no good to you if you start from the very basis of, well, God's part in this is really unimportant. That's the whole point. God is ordering your life for God. The reason that there is Proverbs is not so that you can just live a better life, so that you die fat and happy and leave a big inheritance to your children. The reason Proverbs exists is because God is glorious and he deserves glory from your life. And if you will heed his wisdom in this book, then you will find a life that is rich and valuable and enjoyable and sometimes hard, but always for his glory. That's what the book of Proverbs teaches you, and that's why you must start with the fear of God. And may I say, as directly as I can, for those of us who are in the new covenant, this, of course, means that we submit ourselves to the rule and the reign of Jesus Christ, who is himself Yahweh incarnate. Jesus, who is himself, Colossians 2 tells us, the very wisdom of God. Jesus is whom we should fear. Jesus is whom we should revere. Jesus is to whom we owe all homage and for whom we live wisely. You do not live wisely simply to get accolades or to get by better. You do it to please the God who has given it to you. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. The alternative is to be a fool, to despise wisdom and knowledge. The word fool in the book of Proverbs is usually just talking about someone who doesn't know the Lord. Just usually, not always, but usually talking about a non-believer, someone who doesn't know Christ. And so if that's you, you got to put yourself in the right category in this book. Understand what you're facing, rather than those who are willing to humble themselves under the mighty hand of God and receive his wisdom. When I was just about to get married, Darlene and I were about a month away from our wedding. I went to Scotland because, that was really helpful for wedding planning, and visited my brother. And then I decided I was going to go off on a trip on my own to see the Highlands. So I took our rented car. I found out pretty quickly you have to sit on the other side of the car, and it was stick shift, so you have to do stick shift with the other hand. And then I found out, you have to drive on the other side of the road too, so that's kind of confusing. And I took off to the west coast of Scotland, a couple hours away, and I figured I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. I don't know where I'm staying. I don't really know what's there, but surely someone will help. My mother, of course, before I had left, said, "Do you know where you're going?" And I said, "Yeah," which is not true. So I ended up in a town on the west coast of Scotland, a lovely seaside town, and rather than try to find a place to stay for the evening, I decided to get dinner. And so I did, and it was horrible. And I got out of dinner, and then I figured, okay, I guess I'll look for a place to stay now. And so I started walking around to all the various inns and found out pretty quickly all of them were full. No vacancy, no vacancy, no vacancy. About 15 different inns in this one town, none of them had a vacancy. And it was about 8 o'clock at night at this point. And I didn't have a cell phone. And I didn't know where I was. And so I got in a car and just drove. And I tried to fill my car with gas at one place, and one just kind Scottish gentleman helped me. They put the stickers in a different place. And so I was looking for the 87. I couldn't find it. I just picked one up, and the Scottish dude is like, "Well, that's diesel." I was like, "Oh, okay, thanks, man." So didn't want to buy that used car. And eventually I found a little light. There's almost no daylight left, and I was starting to think I was going to sleep in this rented car. And I got to driving on this just country road, basically, and I saw a little light by the side of the road with a little number, and it said vacancy. And so I pulled in, and it was just this old Scottish woman who had a room in her attic. And she said, "Come on in. I know that you messed up." Obviously, I get what's going on here. Dumb American. And she let me stay in her attic, and when I woke up in the morning, there was this wonderful Scottish breakfast with haggis and blood pudding and the whole thing, and it was actually really good. And when I think about the book of Proverbs, I think about that trip, about how foolish I was. There was obvious instruction from my parents, which you're going to hear over and over again in the book of Proverbs. My son, my son, my son. Over and over and over again, we have instruction in our lives, people telling us, the Bible telling us, this is the way to live. And so often our default is, nah, I know better. And yet what strikes me is that in God's kindness and in his grace, he extends his hand once again. That there is a light in the distance. That through the gospel of Jesus Christ, his mercy shines on us once more. Not when we deserve it, but when he gives it. And even in an hour, maybe like you're in, a hard one, a dark one, he gives to us the light that we need to live skillfully and to live for him. That's the book of Proverbs, and I'm excited to study it with you. Let's go to the Lord together in prayer. Heavenly Father, would you seal these truths to our hearts? Would you make us wise? Don't let us be arrogant. Don't let us be proud. Make us more like Christ. There are so many lessons we still need to learn. There are so many things we think we know that we don't know as we ought. So teach us, we pray. Instruct us. Shape us by our study in Proverbs. Use these next months through this book to transform a young adult group in the church into a wise, teachable, humble group of servants. Those who are willing to learn and to teach what they have learned. And may all of it go to the glory of our Savior, Jesus Christ. For it is his infinite praise that was the purpose of your creation of this universe. It is why we have this book to begin with, so that our lives might make much of him. Do that, we pray. And do it for the sake of his name. We pray all of this according to his power and his will. Amen. Well, I think we have a slide for the discussion questions. Great. So go ahead and what we're going to do now, if you haven't been here before, we're going to break up into discussion groups. So groups of 4, 5, 6, 7 people, something like that. Just the people you're sitting around, move the chairs, get in a group. And, you can use these discussion questions if you want. If you have other things that you're curious about, that you want to talk about with something that we just read, certainly do that. But this is maybe just be a helpful guide to you as you work through that discussion. So take some time and do that. And then after you've talked through some of these questions and thought through some of this, share with each other any prayer requests you may have, things that you would like for each other to know that you could be lifting before the Lord this week. If you have a book or something, write them down and then actually do remember them this week and pray for people. And then ask them again next week how that thing is going. And then when you're done with that, you're done. Thank you, guys. I'm excited. Are you excited to study this book? I'm pumped to study Proverbs. I'm excited. Riley's going to be bringing the heat next week as we start studying Proverbs. So thank you guys for being here tonight. And let's get into discussion groups now. Break.